Ho ho ho! Welcome to week 13. Or, as I like to call it, what the hell is wrong with us? Um, in case you missed, Lee Jackson's rather elegant and snippy summary, which is going to beat anything I say tonight, but there you go. Everyone who needed to win lost. And everyone who didn't really need to win won, pretty much. Let's see. The Honey Badgers just trashed me. Dante's me bro, 136 to 83, which just feels like a waste of a good score, to be honest with you, because my team did nothing. I've lost 3 top 8 wide receivers, so at this point, I'm not particularly surprised by it anymore. To the point that it came down on Sunday night. I was hoping Mason Crosby scored me 60 points from the kicker position, and that was my only hope. Eric Ebron decided, or someone in Detroit decided that Anquan Boldin was meant to play tight end on Thanksgiving, and so I got a nice 0 from him. Drew Brees on the Honey Badgers just went off, as everyone knows probably at this point. 45 points, 49 points or so. And anyway, my prediction of a Honey Badgers and IFIT final looks pretty good this week. The only teams that scored better, the only team that scored better was the Kentucky Aardvarks up against Saxby Cutler. Saxby Cutler, of course, a team that needs to win, lost with a nice 86-point score, making it the second lowest score, just above mine. I like to be the best, whatever I'm doing, even if it's scoring low points. So that was nice. The Kentucky Aardvarks put up the highest score with 143, and of course that can't help them get to the playoffs, but it sure does change their seeding a little bit for the consolation bracket, so that's good to see. I'm sure they were happy finally to see some of their players go off and reward them a little bit. I remember, right, yeah, their streaming the streaming quarterback, Kaepernick's just basically a version of the Oregon offense that Kelly used to run, I guess. Either way, he's getting a ton of running yards, and throwing for 3 touchdowns or so doesn't hurt either. So that was a good stream while Andrew Luck was out. That combined with Jordan Reed putting up 31 points despite tearing or breaking something or other. We don't know what's going to happen with him this week, but he definitely got injured during the game and continued to the tune of 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everyone else just scored reasonably well. DeAndre Hopkins, despite having some of the best hands in the NFL, put up his standard 12 because, again, the theme of this year is bad quarterbacks more likely produce bad results for stunning wide receivers. I think that's a lesson to take from this season, personally at least. Saxby Cutler put up a brave performance despite the 86-point total. Gore, for only the second time this year, didn't break double digits in fantasy points at least. But he can hardly be blamed for the loss because Jennings, who was meant to just go off against Cleveland last week, did not. To the tune of 55 yards and 2 catches by the look of it, for a total of 7 points. One thing about matchups for running backs, I'll say it before I forget it. Jay Ajayi, who was on my team, he's still putting up decent yardage, which doesn't help you out a lot, and I can tell you, in a PPR league. But the reason I'm mentioning him is because there was a little debate this week about whether he was worth rostering or whether he would score a lot because he was going up against the 49ers, talking matchups, and just in case you're planning matchups, deciding who to play. This is not the first week that they stifled a running back, and I know the larger comment about Ajayi is his offensive line. That's pretty much every running back. Like, if they're doing well, they have a good offensive line, or they're David Johnson. And if they're doing badly, it's because they've got a bad offensive line, and that's just kind of paint by numbers a little bit. So that might be true, and he might need his 2 offensive linemen to come back before he's better. And that just might explain the 49ers matchup being a bad one all of a sudden for a running game. But another thought I had, or I heard, I forget at this point, was that this is the second or third week that the running, their epically bad running defense in the 49ers on the 49ers team hasn't been so terrible. So it's either they stacked the box against David Johnson, and then Ajayi didn't have his offensive line in shape, which he needs because he's not that great, apparently. Or the 49ers defense isn't as bad as it was. Just put a pin in it if you're planning matchups against the 49ers. Not that you're probably benching a running back because of it, but it's probably worth noting that it could be the other thing. Not just the offensive line, but maybe the 49ers are putting up a better defense as well. Anyway, where was I? Saxby Cutler got defeated by the Kentucky R-Fox soundly. And again, sorry Sax, because I know how it feels this week, but yeah, it feels like a waste of a really good score. Who else won that didn't really need to? It hurts when Eifert put up again another healthy 139 points, going 10-2, still in contention for the bye week because the Goofy Ridge Runners could win this week, and if it hurts when Eifert lose this week, the bye week switches. But neither team's sweating the playoffs particularly. They're the two highest scoring teams at the moment. Goofy Ridge Runners for the entire season, and Ertzman Eifert for the last few weeks, 6 or 7 weeks at this point. So despite the Pugs, again, another sound performance by the Pugs here. They might be the only team on the upswing other than our leaders at the moment. So that bodes well for them coming into this, yet again, must-win week. They put up 122 despite the bottom half of the roster being unable to break double digits. Derek Carr did fine. Todd Gurley, again, he's like Hopkins at the moment. He's putting up his standard double digits that there's little to be excited about anymore. Le'Veon Bell can also be counted on for epic scores. He put up 24 this week. Terrell Pryor, someone I'd mentioned once because he was throwing the ball as well, and I said something about, that might be worth rostering. Worth pointing out that he really broke out in week 3. Since then, he's been a number 1 wide receiver, which I think means top 12. If you take out those first 3 weeks, he's been better than that for the whole of the season. Remember, he's an older breakout, and also talking about bad quarterback play hampering wide receivers. He's not even getting epic amounts of volume. He's getting volume, but not epic amount of red zone volume, which was what Allen Robinson was getting last year, which made a good wide receiver able to produce with a bad quarterback. Terrell Pryor's not getting that kind of red zone volume, but he's still putting up a number one wide receiver season, and he's doing it with the likes of Cody Kessler and Josh McCown, who's fine, but he's not doing it with the best quarterback. So that to me makes what he's been doing this year just a little more impressive when you see the likes of DeAndre Hopkins and Allen Robinson, these very young, uber-talented, highly drafted individuals, not able to put up a number 1 wide receiver, and we write it off because, but they got bad quarterbacks. Well, Terrell Pryor, this is his first season as a true wide receiver. He's older than them, he's played the position less than them, he wasn't even drafted, and he's got worse quarterbacks, and he is putting up a number 1 wide receiver season. That's pretty cool. Also, the Texas Pugs, Devontae Parker, I mentioned he looked like he was rounding into shape. I still think that he looks good on the field, but only managed to put up 9 following his last 2 performances. That might be a little disappointing, but I'd still rather have him than not. So the Texas Pugs have 2 good running backs, Gurley being the least of his running backs, which is bad for this season, but good overall. 2 wide receivers that seem to be rounding into form here when it counts. Kelvin Benjamin, who's going to get catches because Cam Newton promised he would never not get a catch again. And some good streaming options down here. So I really think of those of us that need to win this week, Texas Pugs do seem to be the ones on the upswing. And I think really we can all attribute to that, to the devastation that they suffered in week 1. That really helped turn their season around. So whoever did that, that's probably why they're doing so well. But despite those good signs from the Pugs, coming up against Eifert right now isn't great. And I hate to see it. I really haven't been waiting for it or hoping for it. But David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, two best running backs in the league right now, one with a good offensive line, one with a bad one, I'll point out. Melvin Gordon was meh this week despite volume, but David Johnson put up his standard 30 points, which seems to be every week, but he also seems to have been injured. He injured his finger. I don't know how badly or how much that's going to affect him, but again, volume for a running back usually equals injury, and I hope he's not going to get injured coming right into it. It counts here, because if you're used to getting 30 points a week from a guy, you quite like that continue in the games at a sudden death. Unfortunately, I don't know. I was going to say something about it hurts when I thought getting a bye week not helping him, because he doesn't get a week off, and then I realized we're not even there yet. But still, Kirk Cousins seems to be rounding into form as a good quarterback. Speaking of all the bad quarterbacks in the league, hard to admit, but he's putting up solid games, and people that watch them, because I don't watch many Redskins games, but his numbers are fantastic this year. Just looking at his fantasy production, the last two games have been over 30. But people that watch tape and actually know about football say he's actually performing like it as well. So he probably someone we're going to see drafted next year rather than picked up off the waiver wire. And so is Derek Carr on the opposite side. I mean, gone on too long about this game. But the rough shot of it is I thought won when they didn't need to. The Texans had lost, but since everyone else lost, he's in the same boat as Saxby, Cutler, and myself, because we all still have the same record, and we need to make a one-game difference. So it's coming down to the last week here. All right, last two Goofy Ridge runners edged out in a nail-biter. They edged out not Jerry's Cowboys, 106 to 105, so as close as you could make the game. And these two guys did. I don't mean to give advice, because what the hell do I know, really. But just drop the second kicker. I don't care which two kickers you have. If you have two kickers, you have one too many kickers. And Justin Tucker, I don't say it because I know Cowboys is new to the league and haven't played much before. Justin Tucker's actually a pretty good kicker. He'll still put you up one now and again, but that's the thing with kickers. They all can. There's really no difference between them, and I've never seen an effective way of producing it. But Justin Tucker's a really good kicker and a good team that kicks a lot of field goals, because Flacco can suck in the red zone sometimes. And Dan Carpenter can put up numbers, sure, but you don't need to, and Justin Tucker's fine. And that's not just because it would have won you the matchup this week, it's just because if there's someone on the waiver wire you want to pick up, you can drop that second kicker. And thought I'd throw that out there. Well, the reason Goofy Ridge Runner's numbers are down was because Brandon Cooks was not targeted. I mean, the Saints put up 49 points, and Cooks doesn't record a single catch. So now Brandon Cooks obviously sucks. Well, probably not, but certainly helped out Michael Thomas, who's probably going to come out of this the second best rookie at least of this draft class. The first best rookie was also on the Goofy Ridge Runners team again. It's like he's on the team every week. Who put up again his standard 25 to 30 points up against Washington. Side note, I have the Minnesota defense, and they're going up against Dallas this week. I have no idea whether I should drop them or pick up a second defense, which is, not something I normally don't do, just like I normally don't carry a second kicker. The waiver wire this week's kind of barren anyway, so maybe you should keep that second kicker, because there's not that much to pick up. I'll mention that in a minute. Speaking of Michael Thomas, he was also on Goofy Ridge Runner's bench, so I imagine that's a sigh of relief for winning, because the 31 points that went to Thomas instead of Cooks account for the difference between Goofy Ridge Runner's normal score and this week's score. I don't know what to tell you there, man. One of them is going to go off every week, because Drew Brees has been the best. We keep talking about Dak Prescott, and we keep talking about, I was just talking about Cousins, and Matt Ryan putting up this epic season. Of course, Tom Brady on his second revenge tour 2.0. Drew Brees has been the best quarterback this year, and I don't think anyone mentions that at all. On the road and at home. Not just at home this year either. So, yeah, put that in your over 35s can't play pipe and smoke it. Speaking of older players, Matt Forte only put up 7 for the Goofy Ridge Runners as well. But again, it didn't cost him the victory, but kind of a surprise performance considering the numbers he has been putting up before this. Greg Olson just had a bad game. His points were fine for a tight end, but not what he's been putting up, at least the first half of the season. But he's actually, I think, if I remember right, he dropped the pass, which pretty much ended the game. It was a difficult catch, but he couldn't reel it in when normally he would. And that's by and large what lost the Panthers the game. So he just seems to have a bad game. But of course, when you're that, we'll let him have one bad game without calling him a nasty name. Brandon Marshall came back into form. Turns out all he really did need was Ryan Fitzpatrick, I guess, because he was able to put up a healthy total of 18 again. Back to the good old Ryan Fitzpatrick days of 2015. In the last game, Sanchez butt fumbles, who didn't need to win, is really just playing because they're a good league member, and because who doesn't like to beat people? They trashed the Stony Jabronis, who actually dropped to 6-6. They're now safely in the playoffs. That second path to the playoffs I was talking about, that's gone because we all lost. So even though the Stony Jabronis lost, it doesn't matter at this point. We couldn't catch them up. We could only draw. Well, one of us could only draw. So he's definitely in the playoffs, but probably lost first seeding in the division that's on the left. The blue or the black division? I can't remember which one. Yeah. Black division, that's right. Alright, they struggled because, like a lot of people were saying, they thought Thomas Rawls was a perennial running back talent for some reason, who would immediately come in and fix the offensive line. Turns out that didn't happen. Although the Seahawks game just screwed everyone across the board. I don't know what. My Seahawks for the Super Bowl picks looking even more outsider-ish. I know odds say Cowboys and Patriots, but what's the fun in picking what someone's already told you is most likely? Was why I went for the Seahawks, and they did seem to be on the upswing, and they just suck. I don't care what the analysis says. That's the only reason I can think of. Tampa Bay didn't suddenly become a great defense, or a good offense for that matter. They didn't even put that many points up while on offense. It was their defense, which, again, it didn't suddenly become good. Anyway, the pass rush, which is mediocre at best, just destroyed the Seahawks offensive line, and we go back to the offensive line explains everything explanation. Anyway, my point was Mark Ingram was on the bench with 29 points, which would have put up numbers that the Jabronis are used to putting up. I can understand why he's on the bench, because you've got a Hightower Ingram situation, like the Cooks and Michael Thomas situation. Really no idea which one's gonna need to be started from week to week. So not a bad call at all, just it didn't go their way this time. And Thomas Rawls being the only show in town, and did get more volume this week, so yeah, it should uptick. If Seattle is able to fix whatever went wrong this week, even a little bit, his numbers should come up. But again, it's not Rawls. Everyone on the I didn't mean to sound like that. Rawls isn't any good. Everyone on the Seahawks struggled this week, so Rawls suffered from the same cause as everyone else. Anyway, that seems to be the main source of the low numbers. Oh, and Steve Smith putting up a 6, which isn't terrible, I guess. At the end of the day, it's still points. You can suffer a 0. It turns out. You have Eric Ebron, so yeah, and Tyler Eifert certainly stepped it up this week, and with AJ Green out for the Stony Jabronis. But yeah, Steve Smith, I have no idea how he does what he does anyway, so I'm not going to pretend I know why some weeks it will go down to 6. Just some weeks it will, I guess. On the other side, Sanchez butt fumbles, finally saw some of its studs come through for it at the right time. Carlos Hyde, Odell Beckham, even Eli Manning was able to put up numbers while having one of the worst games of the season. 21 points from Eli Manning. LeGarrette Blount, whatever his name is, from the Patriots, going back to a non-consistent running back, which also almost makes me feel like everything's right with the world again finally. But they took some gambles and won with it, including playing Paul Perkins, taking a stab at who was going to be the lead back in the New York Giants backfield. Of course, no one was this week, so 5 points was as good as you could have got from any New York, I think, running back this week. Well, Giants running back anyway. Certainly replacement level points, which is fine. Unfortunately, having Emmanuel Sanders on the bench when the game went into overtime, it was just unfortunately the only way of getting him in there, of course, would have been to drop Willie Snead. I guess that would have been the guy instead of switching out Carlos Hyde. So I can certainly see why Sanders was on the bench. He's been consistent, but consistently wide receiver 2. So why not shoot for the high-scoring points game, which Willie Snead was in? Either way, their decision's right. They scored 127 points and won. So good for them. Moving on to week 13. Following the ton of luck I'm getting at this second half of the season, I will go up against Goofy Ridge Runners. So, yeah, that'll be fun losing to them. Although I think I might get Stefan Diggs back this week, so prepare for me to nearly get to 100 points. Stony Jabroni is going to face off against the Texas Pugs. So that's two of us who need to win up against two teams that are already securely in the playoffs. And Ernstman Eifert is going to go up against Saxby Cutler, which is another tough matchup for the Cutlers, again, who need to win like everyone. Well, right now, they don't need to win. They have to win if anyone else wins, in the contenders list at least. Sanchez Butt Fumbles is going to go up against the Honey Badgers. And I don't know, at this point I'm going to predict that the Sanchez Butt Fumbles keep it rolling and get a 2-week winning streak just because 2016, that seems to be the way we roll this year. Not Jerry's Cowboys are going to go up against the Kentucky Aardvarks. So that's a must-win game for the Cowboys. They have to win it and have to have the other two contending teams lose or outscore them drastically enough to win on points. And the Kentucky Aardvarks, of course, are just like I think all of us, just in it for the spoil. We all love to win and spoil everyone else's chances. My season's spoiled, so yours will too be. But remember, the consolation bracket isn't actually spoiled. We'll do something for the consolation bracket as well. Just not $200 for a JK knife. Because I don't have to worry about that, because I'm obviously going to dominate. Goofy Ridge Runners, the highest scoring team in the league, still. Goofy Ridge Runners 1566. Yep, still the highest scoring team in the league. Hey, good to know I don't have I have a good matchup this week in the sense of challenging. So yeah, that's where we stand. And again, it's the same as last week. And when I said it comes down to next week, I thought one or two teams would win, and then we'd have the same situation with a narrow field. No. Something is wrong with us this year, or wrong with the NFL, or there's a glitch in the matrix, because we are taking it down to the wire, and it's probably going to come down to counting points between two different teams, and that's points 4. Follow your points 4 column, because right now, if Saxby Cutler wins and I win, for example, they've got 1,364 points for, and I've got 1,320. Which means I have to outscore them by a factor of 44 points this week, so that if our records are the same, I would get in. Unless the Texas Pugs or Not Jerry's Cowboys win, in which case their points totals would start to come into play. Anyway, you can do that stuff for yourself. I'm not going to try and math again. It's just not advisable. Alright, so that's last week. That's what we're looking forward to this week, and every game counts. Whether you're even Sanchez Butt Fumbles and Kentucky Aardvarks, you're in very important games this week. So set your lineups and keep playing the way you have been, because this has been awesome. And the consolation bracket might be where the fun is at this week. Maybe I'll lose just to get in it. No, I'm gonna lose because my team sucks. But the player's not. Anyway. So it's going to come down to the wire, which I think is awesome. Waiver wire. Alright, I've got us placed because it looks like CJ Process is not coming back this week, who was able to put up 75, 80 yards and a touchdown behind the same offensive line on one play, but still. Um, so, waiver wire, most columns I've read have got wide receivers. I don't think anyone in this league really needs another wide receiver too. But Quincy Nunn was still out there. He's got a good matchup. The reason I noticed him is because he's going up against a team, I forget who, but they're bad against tight ends, and that's still basically his role. He's the Jets' tight end without being a tight end. Yeah, he's going up against India. He's going up against the Colts, who suck against everyone, but specifically the tight end. Like, if there's a tight end that hasn't caught a pass this season, they go up against the Colts. They've actually scored points just because they're up against the Colts. I think that's the only matchup I still know to be perfectly true. So he was interesting in that way because they don't have a tight end they use. He basically runs those routes. And he put up 21 points last week. So if you're looking for a wide receiver 1/2, he could be that this week. Tyreek Hill, of course, he's uncovered the truth for us. We're always uncertain of Kansas City passing options because of Alex Smith. Turns out if you have a wide receiver who can score points without involving the quarterback, I mean, that game he went into overtime against the Broncos, or how many points scored, and Alex Smith put up like 10 because Tyreek Hill was scoring them on punt returns, he's scoring them on kick returns, he's rushing for them. And so, yeah, a wide receiver that doesn't need a quarterback on Kansas City is the trick to finding fantasy value. I still think, I don't know how much you know about him, some people, he's got a tricky past, which is why he went undrafted. Certainly not my place to talk about. But he's definitely talented enough to be in the league if he hasn't shown that already. But he's mostly got speed. But he's shown clearly he's got some other talents too, and the Chiefs really seem to like him. But what I said last week, I think he'll get more heavily dependent on trick plays. Kick return touchdown isn't a trick play. It's something that's hard, very hard to do even for guys this talented. So you can't rely on it each week. You can rely on the Chiefs wanting to get him involved, though. That is true. So he will get some action every week. Like you see with these 5, 4, 6, 9 fantasy point games. I just think it's going to be up and down, and like with some other receivers, you're not going to know when to start him. So if you want upside, like this week, you have to win, and I didn't look at all those rosters for the bye weeks this week. I think it's just like Cleveland that are on bye or someone, but anyway. And you don't have a flex. He's like an ultimate flex play to me. If you consider him more than that, then again, he's a waiver wire pickup straight. You could go for Anquan Bolden, but I really do just think that was an up against Minnesota thing. Bolden just took over because Bolden's awesome. Thanksgiving almost made me dislike Anquan Bolden, which is just not something you do. It's too cool. But anyway, Marquez Lee on Jacksonville continues to get volume, but owning the best wide receiver in Jacksonville and Allen Robinson, just don't do it. Marquez Lee's good, but he's not as good as Allen Robinson, and it's gonna keep being a mess. That would be my advice, but he's out there. Deshaun Jackson actually put up points next week, the last 2 weeks, reminding everyone that he's speed itself. I mean, he's not fast. He is speed, if you see what I mean, as a noun, a proper noun, not an adjective. But anyway, who's he got this week? Arizona. Great defense, sometimes high-scoring game. Kirk Cousins playing well. I know, I'm surprised to see Jackson out here. Normally he's a stereotypical perfect flex play, but if you think you've got a handle on when he won't be used much, I mean, 118 yards and a touchdown. That's what he gets you every time when he gets the targets and catches. That's what he's always done. So definitely worth looking for him if you need that kind of player. But yeah, Taylor Gabriel, don't fall into it. He's even smaller than Tyreek Hill and fast. I listened to some people that were predicting that he might have a good game, and he really did. 25.75 yards, 2 touchdowns. But that was because they thought that Mike Evans might get ultra covered, and so the targets would shrink to the next man in line. And since there's not many people there, Tyler Gabriel was unknown. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe. He's actually looking at it. Last 4 weeks. I didn't even realize he'd been productive the last 4 weeks. But I'm not going to pass judgment here, but I think it's more. I think it might be harder to predict than those last 4 weeks look. And in matchups, especially those contenders that really count, I to throw my what I think in the ring there. But what I think has not led me right, so who knows. Tight ends, Martellus Bennett was dropped. He's available for pickup. Dennis Pitta, I think he is now the most targeted tight end in the league, and targets usually equal production, unless you're Dennis Pitta, in which case Uber targets results in 6 fantasy points every week, no matter what, guaranteed. So if you need 6 points from your tight end and no more, no less, then Dennis Pitta is out there. Lance Kendricks went off. That might be a thing. I don't pay enough attention to the Rams to really know. I do know that it's very clear that if a team is going to New Orleans to play a game, that they're going to put up points, because Jared Goff managed to do it this week. Whether he's good or not, I don't know, but he's a rookie that went across the country on a late game on his second start ever, and put up multiple touchdowns. That's not about the player, I don't think. Good or bad, I don't think it can tell you. That tells you that if you go to the Saints, there's going to be production. Again, Drew Brees being epic once again. Gary Barnidge was dropped. The one column that I do read about pickups and drops, though, on number 5, J.J. Zacharyson or so, he said to just drop him anyway, because we're done. If McCown couldn't bring him back to life last week, then it's not going to happen. And he's also on bye this week, so I don't even want him talking about it. Quarterbacks. Andy Dalton's dropped. That's probably a good drop. Without A.J. Green, he's just not going to do it for fantasy, at least. Ryan Tannehill's dropped, which just should always be true. Good. Tyrod Taylor's on the waiver wire, though, who's been a number 1 quarterback more than anything else this season, and who's also constantly getting yards. If you need a quarterback this week, I don't think of anyone that would, but still. The reason I'm bringing up quarterbacks at all is, one, to mention how bad is Brock Osweiler. I mean, I didn't think he was going to be great, but from what I saw of him in the Broncos, I thought he'd at least be capable of getting the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, right? Anyway, something I saw which I thought was interesting, or at least cool, because at this point I'm not looking for much more than things that will be fun for me. Robert Griffin III might be coming back. I don't know when. I don't know if it's this week. I don't know if he will become the starter. But he looked like a bad man in the preseason. Of course, his career has been up and down. That one up year and then down. And he gets injured if anyone looks at him funnily, it seems. But him and big, deep ball wide receivers like Terrell Pryor and Corey Coleman and Josh Gordon, for those 3 seconds he was back in the league there, that looked like it was a fun offense in the preseason, which probably means nothing. But might be something to keep your eye on. RG3 might be back in the league again soon. And if you're counting on Terrell Pryor, for example, that might probably be the only way it's interesting information. I was just kind of really hoping to see that the last few weeks of the season. Robert Griffin III comes back and leads them to their first win. Yeah, something. Did they win this week? I don't even know. I'm setting up Christmas trees. I'm moving people from different houses. I'm trying to write finals. I'm really just talking to you because I'm going. Good luck this week. Set your lineups. Make your waiver claims this week. I guess I'll have to figure out someone I want to pick up to fill this hole in my lineup. Maybe I'll pick up a second kicker after everything I said. I don't know. Good luck this week. Every game counts. Good luck to everyone. That's set for the Goofy Ridge Runners. I hope you crash into a big pile of 20 points and no more this week. Yeah. Scary stuff. Talk to you next week. Bye.